So we are about to start our esports panel, moderated by the lovely Jess Brohard. But we're having a slight technical issue, so give us a couple seconds to get that situated. But Jess, you want to let folks know about yourself?
I would love to. So my name is Jess Brohard. Thank you so much for having me here. I'm very excited. This is probably my fourth time I've done GDEX.
I think so.
I would say, which is awesome.
You're a long-time GDEXer?
Yeah, I'm like a veteran by now.
Yeah.
So I am an esports event host, so that means I basically do a lot of stage interviewing, post-match interviews, desk hosting across a variety of titles. Most recently, I've been working with the Call of Duty World League, or it rebranded when it franchised into the Call of Duty League. And I'm a Columbus, Ohio native, so I'm always excited to be here at GDEX, and it's been really cool seeing it grow over the years from the Ohio Game Development Expo into GDEX here. So really excited to be here talking about esports.
Awesome. I think we're ready to pull in the crew. The lovely Google.
Every time. Every time.
Okay, we're live. They're muted.
Beacon from on high.
Sweet. Niko, you with us? All right.
Hey, everyone.
Hey, Niko.
Hey, Niko. Hey, Austin.
Hey.
So Jess gave herself a little introduction. Niko, do you want to start, and Austin, what your background is, and then I'm kicking it to Jess for the rest of the show.
Sweet.
Sure. So I'm Niko Tsirlis. Really started my esports journey 10 years ago as a Halo competitive player. Back in college, really got connected to the grassroots community, traveled to the tournaments, played in a 4-person team, then graduated from Miami University of Ohio and focused on developing various skill sets. I had this corporate job, and at the time I was actually studying accounting, became a CPA, learned project management, analytics, and then over a couple of years I was just thinking about, what would be the dream job, and can I take some of the things that I've learned and apply that to what I love, gaming and esports. And so back in 2015, 5 years ago, AllMid was started as an esports production company, and we ran our first event. It was a collegiate invitational at the Fifth Third Stadium, and it was just incredible. We broadcasted on the Jumbotron. We're on Twitch. There was a lot of support for that. And since then, the community, sponsors, partners, various clients have supported us over the years. And now my life has come back full circle, where I teach the esports events class at Miami University, and I look forward to just helping connect students to industry opportunities and hearing what I've learned along the way.
Awesome. Thanks, Niko. And then Austin, would you like to give us your background? I know we were originally slated to have Matt Benson joining us, but I understand there was some issues, so we're glad to have you here, Austin, instead.
Sure, I'm the lesser of the two, but I'm glad to be here.
I didn't mean to imply that.
No, it's really exciting. A little bit about my background. I've been really passionate about the esports industry for around 12 to 13 years now, just following the industry. I even had a presentation in university where I described why esports athletes should be considered athletes by the general public. Just really passionate about the whole environment. And it was in college and in university after graduation, where I graduated with a software engineering degree, where we decided to co-found eFuse. And the eFuse, the vision behind it was to, there's so many fragments in the esports industry, and we wanted to create a platform that unifies a lot of these fragments, and to provide a platform for gamers, young men and young women to find opportunity in the industry that they wouldn't have found elsewhere, and to be able to potentially change lives of these young, talented athletes is something that really inspires us to build and do what we do. It's one thing to build a company, but it's another thing to bring such an impact to the industry and unify things where previously didn't exist.
And I'm really excited in particular to be talking to both of you because I love both of your organizations. I've worked for and with both of your organizations before, so it's I don't know, just very cool for me. And one thing I love that both organizations are really focused on is esports at a university level, which is absolutely growing. I know that like Miami University was one of the first universities to begin introducing like a collegiate level esports competitive team, as well as actual academic courses that you could take. And Niko, I know you often will, for instance, bring on Miami University students at your events like Pivot, which yours truly, of course, hosted last year. Can you talk a little bit about those opportunities that you're creating for university students and how they can expect to take that kind of experience with them in hopefully a career in esports?
Yeah, a lot of people think that esports is a separate thing, but esports can be interdisciplinary. You can be a marketing major with an emphasis in esports. You can work in media production with an emphasis in esports. So with the class that I teach, I look at the majors of the students, and it's pretty wide-ranging. It's pretty inclusive overall. In general, the biggest trend that I see, there's a good amount of STEM-based students, science, technology, engineering, mathematics, and they tend to focus on the production and the tournament aspects. So in thinking about a tournament bracket, that's basically a visual solution to an optimization type of problem. And then business majors like to focus on the outreach, the partnerships, the sponsorships. There's a lot of activities in those areas. And what I try to do is involve the students in real world opportunities. So in the class, it's one thing to have knowledge, but it's another thing to have access to people in the industry, as well as applying this knowledge to real world events. And one of the events we ran was Pivot. This was last year at Kings Island Amusement Park. And it was a full day event. We had sponsors, exhibitors, Markiplier came, industry, guest speakers, and the students were helping at that event. And they got to see it not just from a attendee perspective, but they also got to see behind the scenes. They got to meet the players. They got to see how everything works, the cosplay, really how these events work. And I think that by connecting these students with these real world opportunities, that is one of the best things they can get. And as a teacher and as an events coordinator, I'm looking to help connect more students to these kinds of opportunities.
And then Austin, I know eFuse, kind of your primary purpose is sort of a networking tool to create these opportunities, connect people with the people that they need to meet in order to get these jobs, and then also a lot of scholarships and stuff. So can you talk a little bit about eFuse's sort of impact at the collegiate level?
Sure. We have multiple different things and entries into this sort of environment regarding opportunities. We have an entire opportunity panel that we've built out with opportunities compiled from many different sources that you can search through on eFuse and discover ways you can use your talents and abilities inside the environment. But there's also ways for these organizations and universities to create an organization on eFuse and to be able to broadcast those opportunities that they have at their university. So an organization might be able to go create an account on eFuse, and then doing so, they can create an opportunity where all these young athletes can be able to apply for a scholarship and apply for maybe even an internship there at the university and use their talents as some other aspect there as well. So it's more of just a wide range of inclusiveness in terms of just opportunities across the board for these young athletes. There's actually some really cool features we're building right now. I don't know if I can actually leak those to you yet, but there's some really cool things we're doing to provide direct access and direct knowledge of I'm one of the best young athletes across the world, and I'll just leave that there. I can't give much more than that, but some really cool things that we're doing to really try to impact this this demographic.
Well, let's talk now about COVID because, it's kind of the elephant in the room. There's a reason that we're not doing this face-to-face, and only part of it is that some of us maybe haven't showered yet today. But COVID had a huge impact. It's pretty undeniable on really esports as a whole, and from things like, increased traffic to, physical sports being shut down, at least temporarily, and everyone having to go, all right, well, we'll watch this, whatever esports is called instead. So for eFuse, for instance, have you seen like a huge uptick in things like traffic and demand for certain features because of that?
Sure, we have seen an uptick in general users using the platform more just because they have more time. They're at home and they're able to have access to a device more often. One thing, it is a terrible thing that it's happening, so it's kind of an unfortunate event just with everything that's going on, but we are seeing a general increase across the board in terms of users coming back to the site in that case.
And then Niko, for AllMid, have you been able to, how busy have you folks been in terms of event production, doing things remotely?
Yeah, historically, we've run in-person events. So we started 2020 with a full calendar. In January, we had an event in Cleveland. In February, we had the event together in Cincinnati. And then in March, when coronavirus hit, it pretty much wiped the event calendar clean. And with esports, it moves pretty fast, and we're used to moving fast, so fortunately we've been able to adjust. We've done two things to adjust with COVID. First, we have become production partners to various groups and conventions. So we were going to travel to Atlanta, as an example, to run tournaments at a convention called MomoCon. It's a gaming and anime convention. And we ended up just helping bring that community online. And we've helped other groups do that as well. We were going to run a Valorant tournament. We ended up doing that online. And with the growth of Valorant, that's been a very big game. I remember we released the registration for that, and I think in 2 hours we hit the registration cap just because everyone was playing Valorant at the time, which is a good timing. But then beyond that, as a company, we've also grown to not just focus on events, but to also focus on teams. So this past year, we have signed a professional Rocket League team, and recently they've qualified for Ionix's North America main event. And it's really exciting because the players are also from Ohio. And the players represent the greater Cleveland area and the greater Columbus area. And it's exciting because when they play, it feels like you're playing for Ohio. And oddly enough, although COVID definitely impacted our calendar and activities, it actually helped bring all of us together.
So I also want to kind of lob that same question at both of you, because I know that GDEX itself, and Chris, you as the whole creator, I know a lot of people went into creating this, but you also do multivarious games and all kinds of other stuff that you're involved in. So how have you had to pivot in addition to just as far as GDEX being virtual?
So we talked a little earlier about just the whole transition of GDEX going virtual and the question of whether we were even going to do one or not. So that was a big thing. And when we started, so we've been working remotely since mid-March. So at that time, we were like, all right, 3 months, we'll come back, we'll chat together.
Jesus.
Then in the June, we're like, all right, well, it can't be that bad in another 3 months. And then, of course, we are where we are. So from all our events, similar to Niko, all of our events just got completely wiped. We didn't do any of our normal charity partnerships and stuff, some of which you've helped with before. And then we decided to do this virtually. And then just in our day-to-day, pretty much all of the clients that we work with just seized up. They stopped spending money. They stopped wanting to get apps made, stopped wanting to have experiences made. So I think as a small business, we're in the same spot as a lot of folks where we just had to get real tight and be creative on how we spend our time and our money. And then also everyone at Multivarious is also a professor. We're an adjunct. So we all teach, and of course that's gone virtual as well. One of the nice things, I was actually having a conversation with someone this week, is that because we're in gaming, all this technology, we're already familiar with it.
Yep.
We know how to use Discord, we know how to use
Yep.
Zoom and Google Meets. So it wasn't that hard to make that transition. Whereas I could see a lot of other people who just, they don't know what. I heard people like, "What's Zoom?" I was like, "Man, we Zoom all the time,"
Yeah.
So we were fortunate in that regard, but it's definitely been challenging. And we were talking outside, like, we'll do GDEX in 2021, right? But like, I don't know. I mean,
Who knows?
should we start planning for it? Like,
Right.
I don't know. So hopefully we'll know more in the next 2 or 3 months, and I would much prefer a physical GDEX, but
Yeah. I've been missing IRL events. Caleb, do you have anything to add? Because I know I've been kind of monopolizing the conversation. I want to give you a chance to say
that's
it.
your job.
I know.
Right? Yes. Kind of the same thing. As a slight bit of an outsider for esports, I've been in esports a little bit, but usually on the production aspect. Those jobs just kind of went away, and even beyond that, radio and TV stuff just kind of went away. It's all distant. It's made it really difficult to stay focused.
Yeah.
So it's encouraging to see that everyone is staying encouraged and inspired.
Yeah. Well, so then on that note, let's look kind of to the future. And, Niko and Austin as sort of pioneers in this industry, you might have a little more insight than the rest of us onto how is this going to change things permanently, long term within esports? Are we going to, because surely this is going to cause a permanent shift. We don't know how long COVID's really going to last. We don't know when a vaccine's going to come out, all that good stuff. Could be, 2 months, could be a year. As I'm not a scientist, I'm not a doctor, who knows? But even when this is in theory over, surely there's going to be some lasting impact. What do you see that impact being? Niko, we can start with you.
Yeah, I think we're all learning from each other, and esports in general is a relatively new industry. I know we've learned from others as well along the way, so I think we're all just learning together. I think in general, esports seems to be going beyond athletics and into new media. So in Miami University, the esports program is housed under interactive media studies. And in looking at things like Marshmello having his concert inside Fortnite, Travis Scott, this kind of new media is very interesting. And I think GDEX is a great forum to talk about this because GDEX brings together people that make things. And I think that's where it's going. And even just this past week, I saw that there was an announcement that Asa Butterfield got signed to Team Liquid. And for those of you that have seen the movie Ender's Game, Asa Butterfield is the actor that played Ender. And so here's this Hollywood actor being signed to an esports organization. And you've got LeBron James's son being an ambassador to FaZe Clan. And so I think there's a lot of connections between music, entertainment, and esports under this category of new media.
And Austin, what do you think?
Yeah, I would like to second that. I think Niko hit the nail on the head. We've been doing just one of the transitions we've made is, doing events on a large scale and trying to unify the industry in a way that hasn't been unified before. For example, we've done a Women of the Arena event where it's some of the most talented women in all of the esports industry competing against each other online, because you can do that in esports. You have the ability to have virtual large tournaments. We've even done tournaments with professional athletes, and just seeing that transition of other industries interested in esports is extremely exciting, and I think that's something that's going to continue to grow. And we've been seeing it at eFuse specifically, having some of the really cool events with professional athletes from other sports, entering into this environment that we haven't seen in a way before. So I think that's definitely something that's going to continue to push that way, and I think it's a really good thing for esports.
And I think it's clear that esports is very obviously beginning to influence a lot of other industries. And esports already has obviously drawn so much influence from traditional sports, but then in other ways, I think it's kind of the reverse is now true. I think traditional sports probably have some stuff that they're going to be taking away from esports. So I wanted to ask, what are some things that both of you see maybe esports trying to copy traditional sports on and failing? Like, what are some of those common mistakes that you're seeing? Because, we've seen this happen a lot. Do you have something?
Actually, so this is actually getting really close to a question that one of our viewers had, which was hitting upon usernames and real names. I know I've always had this qualm as a production side person of, man, I hate having to read all this leet speak to understand who I'm talking about.
Mm-hmm.
Is there going to be a shift to more real sports where we're actually using legal names for identifying our players? So I don't know, maybe that's part of the conversation.
I think that's definitely an interesting point to kind of wrap into that question.
Sure, I'll go first. I think one of the biggest challenges with esports and production is the ability to communicate to an audience that hasn't yet played the game. I think when you're watching traditional sports, it's very easy to understand, the ball has to go through the hoop,
The biscuit goes in the
or
basket.
you have to pass this yard line to score a touchdown. So I think it's really easy to communicate that when you're watching and get involved in traditional sports. I think if esports can communicate their game in a way that is really easy to explain to the average user who's not watched the game, I think that's definitely one challenge for esports. I do think the usernames are kind of challenging, but I do think also as these younger generation, as they continue to grow and they're really involved in the esports industry, I think that's going to change over time as they continue to grow older and already adapted to the environment.
Yeah, with the usernames, I don't know. There might be more of the legal names. I know, like for myself, my last name is Tsirlis. It's Greek, and Niko is Nick in Greek. So I go by Niko. It's my name in Greek. I think a lot of people just they kind of like that username. It's like their brand. And then in terms of some of the challenges around esports, I remember 5 years ago telling people we ran video game tournaments, and it was just hard to understand. There have been certain things that have happened over time that have helped mainstream it. The big thing that I hear is just a little unfortunate, but with the Fortnite World Cup, the fact that a 16-year-old won this prize pool more than these traditional athletes, that got a lot of attention, and I think people started paying attention to that. But esports is more than just about the numbers. It's about the relationships and the people that you meet. And I really think that the universities are doing a lot of good in this space by showing how students can get involved into the industry and how they can make this a career. And this is interdisciplinary. And there's a lot of work that still needs to be done. Universities have challenges in having people to administrate these programs. There's not as much experience. A lot of universities are also learning and trying to understand. But I'm very hopeful and optimistic that the universities will do a lot of good in this space.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, sports have been around for thousands of years.
A while.
Possibly, I'm not really a sports person, but I hear it's been around for at least 50 years. At least 50, we can agree on that.
Yeah.
Football,
Yeah.
right? 1950 was invented. All right. And my last name is Brohard, so I never had a question of if I'm going for a username or my real name, because my real name actually just is a gamer tag in and of itself. But this leads into something that I kind of thought of that I would like to bring up is maybe standards of professionalism when we're talking about e-athletes versus traditional sports athletes, because traditional sports athletes are held to certain standards of professionalism, as they should be, and obviously e-athletes should as well. But again, being a newer industry, there just isn't as much precedence, there isn't as much experience to draw off of. Every time something happens, like maybe a team getting caught betting against themselves, it's like, well, this is the first time it's happened, and then it happens again, and now we can say, oh, well, remember when that this just, for instance, that just happened in Rainbow Six, and we can go, hey, remember when those Dota players did that back in 2014 or whenever it was, and kind of here's how they handled it, and that's how they should handle that now. And with esports, it's kind of like how it's so much easier to troll when you're just like numbers on a screen. You're just like an anonymous identity behind a username versus attaching your real name to it. So I guess kind of what I'm trying to say is, how do we establish these standards of professionalism? What kind of thing, how should that look? And should we begin kind of injecting that at a university level and saying like, hey, when you get out into the big leagues, here's how you can act and here's how you can't? I know that was a lot, so Niko, I'll go with you first.
Yeah, it's still developing. It's a relatively new space, and it's, there's talk about the NCAA and will they come and standardize rules, and multiple times they've decided not to. I think this is actually an opportunity for esports to rethink how things are done, and maybe to take some of the best practices from traditional sports and improve upon them. So there's more of a focus on the player, and the player having more visibility, having more autonomy. And I know from our Rocket League team, we focus on our players. They are the stars. We want to support them and what they do. And the developers will have a big say in how that goes. But right now, it's still developing. There's a lot of surveys out there polling the community on what people think should happen. But I know that in general, the university area is doing a lot of work here. I wouldn't be surprised if there's some standards that come out relatively soon. But overall, it's just a big conversation that I think everyone in the community should have.
Yeah, I definitely would suggest that this is just growing pains of a new industry. It's very young. We see this with other industries as well, very new industries, things like the cryptocurrency industry, where it's very new as well, and there's problems that occur in new industries. And I think as things grow over time, more structure begins to be put in place. That's when those, unprofessionalist mentalities start getting out of the industry. So I think, as structure continues to be placed in the industry, we'll be put in a better spot. And I think that does start with institutions like educational universities and colleges, but then also even younger than that being high school. I think there's a lot of high school programs starting their own teams and and I know high school team back at home where I'm from, a small town, is starting a gaming team. And so it's really cool to see some of these, even in the younger than universities, starting some of these teams and starting this conversation of how do I be a professional in this industry at such a young age. And I think it starts with some of those structures being put in place in such a new industry.
Can I jump in here for a second?
Yes, please.
So I find this really interesting because I spend a lot of my time trying to change the perception of gaming in general and make it positive. It's just people outside the industry don't even know. One of the things I mentioned is average age of a gamer is like in their mid-30s. Most people would say it's like 15 or 16.
Yeah.
There's just a lot of things that aren't known about the industry. It seems like a lot of these behavioral issues are a result of not even necessarily that the industry is so new, because frankly, I think it's kind of BS when people say there's no precedent for this stuff, because sports has had this precedent for decades. I think the problem is the industry is moving so quickly that there is no overarching body to decide things or control things.
Well, like anyone, any 18-year-old out there can go out and like be, a pro gamer or like start a company.
Or they can stream on Twitch and YouTube and they can put this stuff out there. And outside of some terms of service stuff within those various platforms, there is no NCAA type body that's creating these rules. So when you have sort of a lack of, I hate to say authority, but some sort of structure combined with the ability to make a lot of money very quickly, the incentive structure starts to get off. The second thing is, and I have this theory that I think a lot of gaming has a problem with some of these issues. Not necessarily, I think maturity is a part of it, and the people in it being younger. But I think it has more to do with our use and comfortability with technology. And one of the things I say is like, you look at my parents or probably a lot of our parents, if something happens, then they're getting all riled up. They're like yelling at a TV, right? But it doesn't go beyond that. They're not on Twitter. They're not using Twitch and YouTube. But as soon as we have something that we're all riled up on, and like
there's a person on the other end to receive that rile.
Yeah,
and it's not just going out into the void.
Yeah,
like
and we have the ability to get it out there, and like we have this Last of Us stuff here. If you remember, like Last of Us Part 2, I mean that game got like vitriolically destroyed, and the only way that kind of stuff can happen is when the audience understands how to use those technologies. And so I think there's a clear sort of technology divide between like millennials and younger and the older generation. But for me, that puts the onus on us as people in the industry that like we've got to curtail and control that behavior. When we're running events, when we run GDEX, we have a very clear code of conduct and how we help people out. But part of the responsibility is on us, and sort of, I think over time we'll band together and create that system.
As a personal anecdote from my time when I was at Game Arena, which is one of our local esports centers, that onus of responsibility falls real hard upon us if these young kids are watching the content we're putting out there, and they do, and then you even watch them as they go to like an internet cafe and start playing games. The things they say are copy paste what we say.
Yeah. Well, yeah, it's pretty easy to see, and I guess let's kind of reframe this into a question then. Do you think that pro gamers, influencers, Ninja, for instance, have a responsibility to kind of set that precedent because they know that the younger kids are going to come in and copy them, and if like they see one of their favorite influencers using maybe racist language, they're going to copy that and think that's okay. And that's honestly, legitimately, that is a problem in the Call of Duty scene right now. It's just like it's really kind of, some of these players say really nasty things, and then the kids who are trying to come up and looking up to them and trying to become pro players themselves will copy that, thinking, oh well, he said it, so that means I can say it. So do people like Ninja, and I know I keep using the Ninja example because everybody knows Ninja, versus if I name like a Call of Duty player, not everybody knows them. Does Ninja, for instance, have a responsibility to kind of set that code of conduct? Anyone?
I guess I would put the responsibility not on like any specific influencer or influencers in general. I think the responsibility is on the esports industry as a whole. I think that goes to even the platforms. If platforms see influencers saying racist things or sexist things, we need to do something, I think, about that. And we need to speak up. And like, that's totally unacceptable. And so I think as a whole in the industry, I think the whole industry can come together and create this mentality and this professionalism and demand it in a way that, hey, we're not going to act this way. This is how we react to these situations. And I think it does start, influencers have a ton of influence over these young minds. I think it can start with some of these people like Ninja stepping up and saying something. But I wouldn't place like full responsibility on influencers, but I do think they have a lot of power. They have a lot of say in providing that standard. Then again, they are a brand themselves. So they do have to play their character and play their role to maintain their brand. But there's a certain level of professionalism and to carry yourself in a way, I believe.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think it's not on a certain person, but just on the industry as a whole. And similar to traditional athletes, they can see themselves as role models to others, especially with people that have these larger platforms. And it's important that whether it's an influencer, whether it's a developer or an event, that all the people in the community should have a general set of expectations. I mean, I remember even back with Wizard in StarCraft, using BattleNet back in the early 2000s, and how do you monitor language there? And that's a hard problem, but it's a problem that needs to be addressed. And even with events, if it's at a LAN center, a convention center, a theater, wherever it is, online, there should be a general sense of etiquette where we are operating together as a community and we do have an inclusive environment. I think that, and I keep going back to the universities because I think it's a good blend of that professionalism with that open, inclusive sense. And there's a lot that can be learned from there. But overall, it is something that we as an industry need to focus on.
I like that you keep going back to the university because I think that's kind of where it's expected to be like taught. That's sort of your formative years. You're out of high school, you're 18, you're in theory, you're an actual adult now, and it's kind of where you learn to become an adult. And I think it sounds like we're all on the same page. Like we want esports to continue progressing and continue being, well, we want it to become great, make esports great again.
Jeez.
I'm really sorry. Mega, MEGA, make esports great again.
There you go.
Mega. Anyway.
Good save.
I just, yeah.
Yeah, we copyrighted it right here on GDEX.
But I guess my question is, what can we do as not necessarily those of us like in this room or virtually who are working in esports, but those of us who are just kind of the average gamer, a member of the gaming community maybe, what can we do to make esports a more welcoming, inclusive place? What steps can we take with what limited power we feel we have?
I think recently there's been a trend away from competition and more towards community. Like just last night, we celebrated someone's birthday party in a Discord channel. They invited all of their friends. We had our cameras on, and we played Among Us. Just had a fun time.
Yes.
And it's just a way of bringing people together, having fun, and building community. And I think even during a time like this with COVID, we can still use technology, we can still use these platforms and just try to bring people together. And that's the spirit of an event. It's bringing people together. And I think as long as we are doing that, and we have the good intentions, then I think overall, I'm optimistic.
Sure, I think technology can be extremely powerful, both in terms of dividing people and unifying people. And I think as we continue to have these organizations and universities strive for the unification of the industry as a whole, I think that's what people are searching for. And it's something that, we might build a feature and we'll have a couple of responses to that feature. But when we do a unifying event, something like the WOT event, the Women of the Arena, when we do things like that, that's when we get the most response, where people are saying, we loved this, we loved how you brought the community together in a way that's not been brought together before. And I think as we continue to use the power of these platforms and the power of social media, the power of technology to strive for that connection and the unification of the industry, I think we'll continue growing together as a whole. And just really exciting.
Yeah, Austin, I've got so much feedback in I believe that's 2 of the Women of the Arenas that I've now been involved in, and like people were acting like I'm just on camera for this. They're acting like I organized it. They're like, thank you for doing this, and I'm like, yo, I just talked to eFuse. I had I wish I could take credit for this, but I just showed up when they told me to. But thank you for doing those Women of the Arena events. I loved being a part of those. Did either of you have anything to add about that kind of topic, or?
Yeah. I have loved working with the local esports programs. I put it in the chat. Ashland, Shawnee, OU, OSU all have great programs.
Yeah.
I've got to meet with a number of their players, specifically Overwatch players from last year and just the beginning of this year. I think it is fantastic that we're starting to teach this stuff and that we're starting to make it all more condensed. But I think as far as going back to what we were talking earlier, from the community aspect, I think we need to stop supporting negativity when it comes out, even from people that we really enjoy the content made from. And that's my TED Talk.
Thank you for inviting us to that TED Talk. Got a front row seat there, and I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, gaming should be like a fun, exciting thing.
Yeah.
And when you hit those moments where you just like, Among Us was mentioned, I played that with a group of friends the other day, and like, it was just a nice, fun, pure gaming moment where we just had a good time, and there was no like nonsense or whatever. And then I went and played Overwatch for a little bit, and I was just like,
And you're like, that's right. That's why I
Yeah,
play with
that's
people that I don't know already.
headphones off. I'm just gonna do my
Just not
tank
use voice
thing. I'll be
chat.
fine.
So let's then talk about what advice we can give to the next generation. I think like a lot of us are kind of around the same age, and we kind of all had to make up our own path, you know?
Are we done already? Are they getting rid of us already?
Yeah, I mean, we have to retire, right? I'm coming up on 40 soon, well, in a decade. But that's the cutoff, isn't it?
Yeah, they just get rid of you.
They put you in a nursing home. So, I mean, we still have some wisdom to impart, I think, on the next generation, but my point being, like, we all had to kind of make it up as we go. Like, there wasn't, now there literally are how to be esports talent classes at the university level, and back when I was making it up as I went along, there was nothing like that, and I wish I could have majored in esports or something like that. So what advice do you all have for the next generation looking to get into esports, whether it's at a university level, as a professional player, or, like, where do they begin, and what are your best tips?
I'll go.
Don't all speak at once.
I'll go, I guess. So, as someone who leads a community, leads this event, teaches, the number one thing that I always say is be involved. Just find local gaming groups, local esports groups. Just be involved as much as you can, because you never know when those opportunities are going to pop up, and they're not going to pop up if you're sitting in your room. They're just not. So, obviously with COVID, it's a lot harder to, like, go out and do things. But being involved in, like, our local community, like COG or GDEX, gives you a lot of opportunities. And then this is more from, like, a creator side, but just keep making stuff. Just keep doing things. You'll get better and better over time. You'll start building an audience if that's what you want to do. If you want to stream or do YouTube stuff, it takes a while to build an audience. It does not happen overnight. And eventually you can kind of get to a place where you'll get that sort of network and that support that will become valuable for your entire career. You don't have to be like the world's biggest YouTuber to make a good network that's going to help you in your career. So yeah, just be involved, keep doing things.
Yeah,
Go ahead, Niko.
Okay. Yeah, same here. Just getting involved is really the main thing. Historically, we go to various events. We go to the PAX events, we go to the DreamHack events, and we bring the team out, and we even have a student program where we bring students to PAX East, PAX West, DreamHack. And I think at events like that, where you can experience some of these best practices and you can meet people and develop real relationships with them, that's where you can really build that sense of community. And you're right, it won't just happen just staying in the room. Getting involved is really important. And I think in general, the Midwest community is a pretty friendly community. And even just within Ohio, there's a lot of things happening in Ohio, a lot of really good things. And if you are a student or in Ohio, just in general in the Midwest, reach out to some of these organizations and just look at what they're doing, ask how you can help. And I think overall, this community is pretty friendly and inclusive. And whether it's an online event or various activities, I know we're planning some things. Just reach out to communities and just get involved as much as you can.
Sure, I would definitely say get involved as well. But since they both already talked about it, I'll talk about something else. I would also say, develop your own skills. Continue working on yourself and making you the best you can be. Because 10 years ago, I would have never imagined I would be a software engineer that created a company in the esports industry. And I would never even imagine myself being a software engineer. But because I continued building and working on my individual skills, I was able to grow enough to where I could create something that could impact this industry. And so as you continue, whatever passions you have, continue to build them, continue to work on them. And focus on the positives and what you're good at and double down on those things. And you'll find weird ways to incorporate what you're good at every day or what your passions are. And you can bring those cool things into the industry. You might be good at guitar, you might be good at, music, you might be good at production or video editing. And there's some really cool opportunities as long as you just double down on your skills and what you're good at, what you love. and use them in the industry. And you can always find a way to enter into the industry through some other skill that you're really passionate about. And so I would just challenge you to continue building those things that you love, and just continue being you.
And did you have anything?
Yeah, I mean, I'll tag on to the end of that. That's one of the things that I teach constantly is diversify not just your skills and ideas, but diversify the cultural imports that you get as well, because that's all going to make you more interesting and more developed. Yeah, there we go.
Yeah.
As a person, it'll make you more marketable into whatever industry you're trying to get into. I think esports definitely notwithstanding.
Yeah, and I think it's really important in esports really to have the ability to wear many hats, as they say. Like, you can't just do one thing. It's very rare that somebody just does one thing and that's what they do and they have a long, successful career. And it's, first of all, just because you never know what opportunities are around the corner, or you never know what's going to happen. And with the, I'll give the transition to COVID as an example. You know, as somebody who I usually would travel to events and work there, I was able to actually have a pretty easy transition into remote hosting because I also stream on Twitch. That's another kind of skill I've developed and another thing that I've been doing. So I'm used to sitting at my desk and still keeping up the energy and talking into a webcam, even though there's no actual audience there and there's no cheering crowd, you know, clapping for the winning players. And I was still able to already do that because I've done that for years. So now when it comes time to having to host an event from home, well, I still know how to bring that energy, and I know how to hook up my camera and make sure everything looks good and dress a set and everything like that. So you have to just kind of develop, lots of different skills, because you never know what's going to happen next.
Sure don't. Cody, how are we doing on time here?
Yeah, I was going to say, no, we're getting close.
A couple more minutes.
Couple more minutes. Okay.
Maybe
Yeah.
Any question from chat?
Are there any questions from chat? Doesn't look like we had
Not just
any
yet.
others.
So it's actually funny you were talking about multiple hats. This jogged my memory. I was talking with the voice of the Jackets, which is the local Columbus hockey team.
Yeah.
I was talking to him the
Mike
night
Todd?
before. What's that?
Was that Mike Todd? No, I'm
No,
sorry.
different guy. We were talking about wearing different hats and how that gets you more spots. He actually didn't start as the voice of the Jackets. He started as the mascot. And he worked his way up. And he was talking about the professional sports industry as it is now. There is not a single person out there, except for maybe some of the pro athletes that are now transitioning into being speakers.
Yeah.
There's no one out there that does one specific job.
Right.
They do many, many jobs. And I think esports now, I think we have realized already that that's just going to be how it's going to be.
Yeah.
No one can have just one job. A speaker's going to have to at some point stream, or they're going to have to do two different hosting jobs. If you're a producer, you're going to have to do lighting, or you're going to have to figure out how to hook up a camera.
Well, and it's because it's not like you're necessarily going to like graduate from college, get a job working in esports, and then that's going to be, and then you retire from that company. It's like you land a job with MLG, and then 30 years later you retire from MLG,
heck,
and you only had that
be
one
around
role.
in 4 years.
Exactly. You have to that game might not be around, that genre might not even be in the meta anymore. You know, it was 5 years ago. Everything was Dota and League of Legends, and everything was MOBAs, and now we're seeing all these VRs, and you just basically have to be able to improvise, adapt, overcome. What's that quote? Was that it?
Sure, sounds good.
Improvise, adapt, overcome.
Did I nail it? Okay, I was very close to nailing it. I like 75%, we'll say. So, did you have anything to add on? Because I know you wear multiple hats yourself is the thing. So
Yeah, so I mean, we have to as a small studio.
Yeah.
We do a ton of stuff. I mean,
Oh my
GDEX
God.
GDEX is a perfect example. Yeah, Cody's our producer, and now
the
he's
voice of God over
running
there.
our entire production thing. I definitely think there's a set of skills that are transferable to anything. Understanding basic video creation and production.
Yeah.
And that's, I don't want to say it's easy, but it's easier to learn. The software is free. Understanding Photoshop and
It's
Illustrator.
easy enough that you don't have an excuse not to learn
Yeah.
it.
Totally. Understanding Photoshop and Illustrator are going to get you a huge way towards anything you're doing. Like if you're streaming, like all these assets, understanding how to put these together is big. I think public speaking is a big one. I tell my students all the time, and they look at me terrified. It's like being able to speak in front of an
I'm a
audience.
gamer.
And this is kind of like I was terrified of public speaking when I was younger. And now, since then, I've done several TED Talks. I do stuff on GDEX all the time. It's a skill like any other.
Well, Kayla gave us a TED Talk earlier, so
Yeah.
he's
It was
joining
wonderful.
you.
But it's it's just one of those things. The more skills you can kind of rack up, the better. And with YouTube and places like Skillshare and whatnot, like there's literally nothing you can't learn.
Yeah. There's even so many websites that you can go to audit university courses for free, like Coursera. And I know this isn't like sponsored, but let's plug that. Coursera, ClassCentral.com. That's one. Yeah, where you can take actual university level courses online for free. Like if you want like a certificate, you have to pay for it. But if you want just the knowledge, then that's free.
Yeah.
You know, nobody in esports is going to be like, oh, did you take that Harvard course on? Did you pay $50 to see that you graduated from the course? No, they just want to know that you know what you're doing.
That's a big thing too. I think it was mentioned earlier, but like
there's
no game degree. Yeah. Like there is now.
Like you can go to
there's game design degrees, but 95% of the people that are in the gaming and esports space do not have a degree in that.
Well, shoot, talk outside of that. Radio and television, there are degrees associated with that. No one cares. They want to see what your skills are.
Yeah. Like, I could have majored in, like, broadcast journalism or something like that. But, you know, I learned by doing, so.
Yeah, you keep doing it, and eventually find stuff you like.
One thing I want to add really quick, I may have mentioned it before, but I think project management is like the meta of work. And so whether you are running, you know, a marketing campaign or making a game, knowing how to structure a project can be very transferable, and that can be very helpful. And I think also a lot of people go into marketing, and marketing can be very big in esports, but to differentiate yourself, maybe having a marketing skill set, but then actually doing something different can help with that. So whether you start out as a player and then you become an influencer, my path was started out in accounting as a CPA, and then project management, and then data analytics. But if you can try to look at various other skill sets that maybe is a little different, that can be beneficial. But I would say project management is a really big one, because no matter what you do, that is absolutely transferable.
I think you're right, and especially like as a you know, if you're any kind of self-employed, just knowing, even if you don't want to call it project management, it's that same concept. You have to know how to like kind of keep yourself to a schedule and manage all the things that you're involved in. But I think we're just about out of time. So Niko and Austin, is there anything coming up for either of your organizations that you want to give a shout out to, or that our audience might want to participate in?
Yeah, we've got our Rocket League team is competing in some pretty big tournaments coming up. We're really excited about that. And then we'll also be making some announcements about some various events. There'll be some different kinds of media we'll be announcing soon.
Yeah, and we have a ton of really cool opportunities coming out. We're calling them golden opportunities. So be sure to check out eFuse's Twitter to follow. To be updated on those opportunities. We'll also have a ton of events scheduled for this month and the next couple of months, and a lot of things on board in terms of features and product development as well. So big couple of next 2 to 3 months for eFuse, and follow the Twitter for any sort of dev updates and opportunity updates as well.
And that Twitter is @eFuseOfficial, or the website is eFuse.gg. I'm doing your job for you, because I know I just tried to find it the other night, and it's not @eFuse, it's @eFuseOfficial. Website is eFuse.gg. October 29th is the next Women of the E-Arena Warzone tournament. I don't know if I'm allowed to say, so I'm not going to, but you should tune in, because it might be cast by someone you know. Hint, hint. Going to be a really fun event. Anything on the GDEX multivarious front you want to shout out?
You
guys are going to be here all day.
Yeah, we're trucking
all
along.
weekend.
We're here all weekend, so.
All right, well, I think we're going to head to an ad break, and then when we return, we're going to have some more GDEX, so don't go anywhere.